Hello, my friend. In today's episode, I'm speaking with Unicorn Society member Simon Docherty, who is the co-owner of Bold Athlete Gym in Calgary, Canada. And Simon tells a story about him going from trainer at the gym to kind of full-time business guy at the gym, and how strategic planning, a regular planning process, is really key to his ability to make that transformation. And now it gives him the freedom to take more time away from the business as needed, and have the gym perform wonderfully without him, which I know something many of you want as listeners. So if you're looking for the freedom to step away from your gym from time to time without things crumbling, this is a great episode for you. So keep on listening. Hello, fitness business nerds. What's up? Welcome to another episode of the Business of Unicorns podcast. Today, I'm so excited to have a Unicorn Society member and business owner badass, Simon Docherty here. He is the co-owner of Bold Athlete Training Gym in Calgary, in Canada. And not only does he have amazing podcast voice, but he's an incredible entrepreneur who's done such great work with his business that I'm so thrilled to be sharing our conversation with all of you today. Welcome to the podcast, Simon.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Michael. I'm excited to be able to sit down and chat with you.
Yeah, I'm so thrilled. I know you've been with Unicorn Society for how long now?
Yeah, I think it was November 2021, the Nashville retreat.
That's right. That was your first one.
Yeah, 5 days, and I found a flight and came down, and what a time.
It was amazing. Yeah, it was the fastest enrollment and turnaround of anyone who ever joined Unicorn Society. Signed up 5 days before the retreat and just showed up in Nashville. It was a blast. I think the first time I met you was at a fried chicken place. Was that the first time I saw you?
I believe that was Hattie B's.
Yes, that's right.
I was a little nervous and saw everybody, but it was an unbelievable time, and it was a great way to get introduced.
Yeah, quick shout out to Hattie B's. Great chicken. Well, I'll just give a quick plug here for anyone who wants to learn more about Unicorn Society. We always have an ongoing wait list if we're not doing enrollments. Go to businessofunicorns.com and click to learn more about Unicorn Society, and join and come to our next retreat like Simon did. But let's dive in and maybe just introduce yourself a little bit to our audience. Let's talk a little bit about Bold Athlete, how it got started, and just briefly what you all do there.
Yeah, so Bold Athlete was started in 2012, so over 10 years ago, but it was just something that we did in the summers. My business partner and I, Alex Allen, he was going to school in the States on a Div 1 hockey scholarship, and I was going to school in Victoria, and we would just run this hockey training program from May till the end of August for people to as an off-season program for guys to get ready, and then it just continued to grow each summer. And when we graduated, we were able to sublease, and then the place that we were subleasing, we ended up purchasing. So we've been in the space that we're in for about 6 years now, and we specialize in training hockey players. And like I say, from May till August, it's solely hockey players, and then once everybody goes back to their teams, we start training adults. We train different hockey teams, like our university team in Calgary, and then we also train a bunch of volleyball. So it's a seasonal business, but yeah, hockey's kind of where we've made our name and made our where we've made our name.
Yeah, amazing. I mean, not many gyms make it 10 years. So congratulations. It's kind of quite a milestone to be around that long. So bravo. I know you and your partner Alex, who you mentioned, you've been doing a lot of work in building kind of infrastructure and systems in the business for at least since we've known each other. And so I want to talk a little bit about some of the wins you've been experienced over the last year or so, and maybe share with our listeners how you got there so they can kind of follow in your footsteps if they are on a similar trajectory. So you mentioned one of the things that's been a win for you recently was you've been able to step away from the business a little more than you used to. So you just talk to our listeners a little bit about what that looks like these days. How are you able to step away from the business, and maybe start to talk a little bit about what did you do that enabled that? How is that possible?
Yeah, I think, like for example, my business partner is actually going out to a gym in Connecticut right now. He's going to work with a guy called Ben Prentice, and the last 5 days we've been taking all his stuff out to Connecticut, and we left Thursday to Monday. But we've slowly been working in the fact that that we can be able to leave, and that we have the employees that are set up to still run the business. And I mean, that's taken a lot of years, and that's taken a lot of work and dedication. But I think the biggest thing that allows that to happen is having really good staff and really setting them up for success. So we have our lead head strength coach, Chris Rockman, but we've just been slowly giving him more and more responsibility. But it's funny. We'll give him a call, and there's a little bit of nerves, like, how's it going? And there's never any calls to us like they need something. They need to figure out a solution to something right now. It's just, it works. He's got it under control, and the other staff that we have on are unbelievable. But it's taken a few years to get to that point. And when we're driving out there to Connecticut, we're thinking, man, it's, this is something we can't take for granted, and really got to appreciate that we do have the right people that run the business when we're not there.
Yeah, well said, my friend. I think that's something that a lot of our listeners I hear from all the time, and some of our Unicorn Society members, that there's a point in the gym where a lot of gym owners feel just kind of shackled to their business, like they can't leave, that they themselves personally have to be there from opening to closing 5, 6, 7 days a week. And that can be a really kind of frustrating period in the business. So you mentioned you have the right people in the right seats to run the business while you're gone. I also know you've developed a lot of systems and SOPs, standard operating procedures, to help make sure people are clear about what the work looks like. So you just talk a little about what have been kind of the most important standards to set in the business to make sure it runs well while you're gone.
Yeah, I think, like, for an example, when we just left, normally I run the meetings on Monday, but we have a structure, and thankfully, to my time with Business for Unicorns, we have that meeting structure. But it's something that's easily passed on to somebody else. You know what I mean? It's not something that only I can do. So in this case, I said, Rox, can you handle take on the meeting and take over everything? It wasn't a problem whatsoever.
That's a great example to start with, right? Yep. If you have meetings, the meetings shouldn't just be canceled when the owner is gone. The meetings can keep going, but they have to be structured in a way and written down in a way that you can hand them off to someone and say, okay, now you take the baton, you run this meeting for a week or two, whatever it is. So bravo to you. I mean, I think the fact that you have a meeting that can happen consistently with a consistent agenda, consistent norms and expectations, means you could hand it off. And that's not a small feat. So bravo, keep going. I think you're going to share another example.
Yeah, I appreciate that. But the other thing is, strategic planning. Since we've joined, I think that was my biggest takeaway, and something that we really addressed really quick, was how to set quarterly goals. And I'm sure it's been talked on other podcasts, but Mark said, and I'll never forget it, in the first retreat in Nashville, but the art of strategy is knowing what not to do. Sure. And for so many years, Alex and I we were trying to do 12 different things. And you have a big vision of what you want to do, but what ends up happening is that you're working so hard to try and do all these things that there's maybe 2 things that get done extremely well. Yeah. So the process of knowing how to set goals and understand where to focus your energy, and the big thing is really getting your staff on board and committed and motivated to what we're trying to do as a company. I think that's really been huge for us, and allowed us to focus our energy and really make sure that people know what they're accountable for within that structure of where the business is trying to go.
Yeah, well said, my friend. I think that's it. I even remember, I think one of our first coaching calls together, I think you shared with me all the things that you and your team were working on. And I was like, holy shit, you're doing this all now? It looked like a 2-3 year plan, but you're like, oh, no, these are all the things we're doing now. And I'm not saying that to poke fun. We all do it. I'm as guilty as anyone. But it just shows that, that it's really hard to delegate. It's really hard to leave the business and walk away, or put people into increasingly demanding roles and responsibilities if everyone is
Right.
spread so thin and pointed in a million
Right.
directions. So part of that streamlining planning has allowed you to step away from the business more. And so, and I love that you shared
Yep.
the Fisher, quote about, strategy is deciding what not to do. So, without going
Right.
into like, all the detail, can you just talk at like a big level, a high level about
Hmm.
what does the planning look like for you? I know you use our planning system, so but I'd rather just hear it from your mouth than mine. So what is the
Mm.
planning process that you all go through that you have found so game changing for you?
Yeah, well, I mean, if I look at a specific example, like one of our big goals last year, or our
Hmm.
yearly goals, was to create a hiring process and an employee onboarding process. So we
Yep.
went through created it on Google Sheets, and we went through this whole, I think it's a 14-page document,
Hmm.
of how we want to hire. And then when I looked to this year, hiring's not, it's not something you want to rush.
Hmm.
So we were able to, if we wanted to hire a new coach, we wanted to get 6 good interns, and this was part of one of our goals this year. But because I created that hiring process last year, what I was able to do is look at, well, here, what can I do, and what can our head strength coach, what can he really take on? So he was a big part of that process,
Mm.
to at the end of the day, as our head strength coach, I wanted him to really like the hire that we brought in.
Yep.
So, I did all the back work to bring in the candidates and whatnot. But when we went through the actual interview process, he took that on and used the hiring protocols that we had set in place. So it was something that I could easily um, delegate to him, that allowed him to take on that process, and that will continue to allow him to hire the people that are great fits for our business. So that's just an example of some, two separate goals from different years, but that
Hmm.
start to add on top of each other and start to allow me to not have to run that.
Yep.
I'm just using an example, but
That's a great
um,
example.
yes,
Because it's a great
yeah,
example of how these kind of annual goals are consecutive, right? You're gonna, the phrase we use all the time is you're gonna eat the elephant one bite at a time, which is kind of a gross
right,
analogy, but I don't know. We keep using it, and so it's the idea that like, yeah, we have to create a hiring process, then we have to use the hiring process, then we're gonna actually probably need to make some updates once we use it to make some adjustments, and all that can't happen in the same quarter. All that sometimes can't happen in the same year. So the idea that you're using annual goals every year that get filtered into quarterly projects shows that it creates this kind of this momentum and this
yeah,
kind of cyclical
yeah,
nature of
absolutely,
like we're slowly making progress and building this foundation kind of one brick at a time. And when you can do it like that, you'll never have to start from scratch with an hiring process again. You have the
yeah,
foundation of
exactly,
what it's always going to be. You'll make tweaks and adjustments, but you never have to redo it if you take the time to do it right the first time. And so it's a great
yeah.
example of when you can tear away all the noise and decide that this is the thing that's getting my focus and attention, you can do that amazing quality work that really sets you and your team up to succeed. So great example, my friend. Yeah.
And I think to answer your original question there, Michael,
Yeah.
I think for the last year, it's been, I've come out to many of these retreats, and keep, kill, combine. It's something we talk about lots at
Yeah.
BFU, and a process that we go through. And the funny thing is it's really challenging at first, because you want to do all these things, but as I've gotten better, it's becoming a lot easier. But I think the next big part of my process is, how do I engage the team so that it's not just me creating our direction, that
Hmm.
we're working together to say, where do we really want to go? How do we look at the issues and opportunities, and um, really start to eliminate and understand our focus points. But right now, it's been me that's been doing that and passing it on to our team.
Yeah.
We have our quarterly planning meeting on Thursday this week.
Great.
But I think when I look at the next three meetings, I want them to really be a part of that process. And I think when they start to build that ship, instead of just giving them tasks, it becomes a lot more uniform of a process, and everybody's working together to say, hey, how can we get this business where we want it to go, not just where I want it to go.
Yeah. Well said, my friend. I think that's so smart. I think the sooner you involve key employees in the planning process, the more you get buy-in, the more you get diversity of ideas and opinions, the more people will want to step up to the plate because they're part of the building process. So I think, I think it's a
Mhm.
great next phase for you. I just want to go back and highlight the phrase you mentioned, the keep, kill, combine process. We borrowed
Mhm.
this at MFF from the Entrepreneur Operating System, sharing this with our listeners. Dear listeners, you can go Google EOS or Entrepreneur Operating System. And one of the things they use, one of the tools that they created for their quarterly planning that they recommend is this keep, kill, combine process where you go through all the things you could possibly do in a quarter. Then you decide, you go one by one, are we going to keep this? Are we going to kill this or combine it with another opportunity? And that's the way Simon, and a lot of us at Business Unicorns, we go through our quarterly planning as deciding what we're not going to do, right? You have to narrow
Mhm.
down the list, kick some things down the road, put some things permanently on the back burner so that we have the energy and focus to do the things we're committed to as well as possible. So thank you for sharing that little tool. That's one that I don't know our listeners have heard of, but I'm glad it's worked for you. Um,
Yeah, and
the,
it's. Oh, sorry. Go
Go
ahead.
ahead. No, go ahead.
No, I was just gonna say it's funny because when you initially hear it, it sounds like it would be really easy, but
Yes.
the process of going through that is much more difficult than it sounds, and
Yeah.
getting really clear with those goals and understanding how to communicate them and how to combine them, I think is a skill that just takes practice and
Yeah.
um,
Well
you
said.
know, yeah,
I think
thank
I, I
yeah,
think
cool.
good teams learn to disagree about those, and like quarterly meetings, quarterly
Yeah.
planning sessions like those should be like a really hotbed of for like debate and disagreement and and battling it out. Let the best ideas win, right? And I think
Mm.
really the strongest teams know how to disagree and kind of rummage through all that process because you're right, it sounds really simple. What, keep co combine, how easy could that be? Well, people have different opinions, so sometimes it
Yeah.
takes a while, and that's a good thing. That's a good thing.
Mhm.
I want to switch gears a little bit because I know another part of the strategic planning that you've been going through and the planning that's really helped evolve your business is you really going from in the last few years from kind of the trainer dude to the business guy, right? Like you started really
Yeah.
in that trainer lane. In the last few years, you really
Mm.
developed yourself into the person who's quote the business guy. So you can just talk a little bit about that transition for you.
Yeah, I mean, back when Alex and I were training, it was just us two training. It was 33 guys one summer, and then it was 66, and we started to have it to hire people. But we got to a point where our gym was full, and we needed somebody to really manage everything that was going on the business side. And although I still love training, and I still love the coaching aspect. That's my role naturally went more to the business side, where my business partner Alex went to he became the director of performance. So it kind of gave us two lanes to the business and broke it down. And yeah, I mean, it was a challenge at first, really understanding what are the roles within the business side of things, and more importantly, where do I start? When I first started, I was creating all these systems, and
Mm-hmm.
there was no roadmap to how do I do this, or is this an efficient use of my time, or how do we do it? And I think um, it was I heard it through Pete Dupuis, but I heard of BFU through him because we followed Pete, and I took a Inside the Unicorn course, and I just realized like all these standard operating procedures and all the ways you guys do things. So it was really exciting for me because it gave me kind of my own little university or learning
Mm-hmm.
platform to understand systems and implement them in our own way.
Yeah.
So uh, yeah, it gave me a little bit of understanding. When we look at the quarterly planning, what can I really focus my time on, and uh, what systems can we introduce into the business, and really started to create clarification um, in my role as the business
Yeah.
guy, which
Yeah.
which was a bit of a struggle to start.
Yeah, I love you sharing that story because I think that'll resonate with a lot of our listeners. A lot of our listeners started on the floor
Yeah,
as a trainer and been slowly trying to figure out how they work more on the business than in it. And you're such a great
yeah,
example of that. If I can just take a moment to give you some public praise, one of the things I've seen you do so well, Simon, that I see a lot of people struggle with, and you're a good example of this, is you have been, at least since I've known you, maybe this is true your whole life, but at least since I've known you, you've been such a sponge, right? You came to Unicorn Society being like, listen, I have a lot of shit to learn, right? And you came with a real kind of a humility that I think is admirable. And you also came with a real willingness to push yourself outside your comfort zone. And I see a lot of gym owners get stuck there. We're like, you know what? They know that their marketing sucks. But the minute they think about
yeah,
learning marketing, they get defeated. Like, oh, I'm not smart enough. I don't know how to do that. I don't know anything about that. Or they learn that they need to, get better at spreadsheets because they need to start tracking their leads or their
yeah,
finances. Like, oh, I don't know anything about that. I can't do that. And they get stuck there at that moment where they have to step outside their comfort zone. And I just want to see that every
mhm,
time I've met you, I've noticed, I've seen that little moment in your eye where like, oh, I don't know how to do that. But then you immediately go to, I'm going to figure it out. I'm going to try anyway. And
yeah.
you just dive into that discomfort zone in a way that is so admirable. So have you always been like that?
Well, I appreciate it. I love learning, and we've got so many great people to learn from it at BFU. But I mean, uh, the big one that I think of is the financial side of things and
Sure.
tracking it. Just like when I first started, it just seemed like so overwhelming.
Mm-hmm.
Like where do I even start, or how do I do this? And through coaching sessions with you and Ben Pickard, it's been, you really give me the tools to make it not so scary.
Yeah.
Because I think that's a big challenge. I never went to school for finance. Sure, I took sports management at school,
Mm-hmm.
but at the same time, like that's what I'm here for. And I think as an entrepreneur, naturally there's a deep hunger to learn,
Yeah.
and I think that's part of the fun of it. And when you can do these things, you're setting your business up to know where to go next time. So
Yeah.
yeah, I appreciate the compliments, but at the
Yeah.
same time, it's part of why we do what we do.
Yeah,
You know,
yeah, I love that. I mean, I think you're right that that you just chose to surround yourself by people you were interested in learning from, and then you weren't afraid to
Yep.
step outside that comfort zone. Well, I mean, I'm going to ask one more question in this before we start to wrap things up, which is, a lot of our listeners are like, yeah, I want to step outside my comfort zone, and there's a lot of things I got to learn, but sometimes they get stuck on not knowing where to start. So maybe can you share a little bit? How did you decide what areas of the business to learn about first? Like, how did you prioritize the areas of the business where you wanted to develop your skill set?
Yeah, I mean, I think it goes back to what I had talked about earlier, in terms of quarterly planning.
Hmm.
And the challenge that we had before is that we wanted to do everything,
Yeah.
and it's not possible, and you're not really setting yourself up for success because you're trying to do all these things, and you end up frustrated because certain things aren't getting done to a level that you want it to. So really stepping back and looking at what does this business need now,
Great.
and what's going to provide us, first of all, a lot of energy within the business, and then two, create time, create uh, create a little bit of freedom in what we do. So that really helps me understand where our business needs to focus. And there was the thing Mark said. I think it was a retreat in Miami, but he used it. Try to make sure your projects that you do one of these four things. And I think it was increase revenue, decrease expenses, increase client experience, or make the lives of your staff easier.
Yep.
So when you can really look and sit down and write down your issues and opportunities and all these things, I think looking at it through that compass of what's going to um, create the most amount of one of those four things, or
Yeah.
what's
Just
going
the most
to,
positive impact. Yeah.
yes, positive impact throughout the business, then
Hmm.
that will really help you guide your decision and what you're going to focus on. And then you can slowly, like you said about the elephant, one bite at a time.
Yeah.
Once you start doing these, and once you start hammering out some of these things, it just becomes a little bit easier, and the process actually becomes fun and engaging.
Yeah, it's such a great response, Simon. I hope you realize how wise that is, because a lot of people I know who are entrepreneurs and gym owners, they decide what they're going to learn next by like what new book just came out, or what new cert is
Yeah,
offered, or what conference is the hot conference of the moment, and they're not strategic about their continuing education and development. And your response
yeah,
is so strategic. I'm going to ask myself, what does the business need right now? And as part of my annual
yeah,
and quarterly planning process, get really clear on where are we focusing our energy and attention, where we can make the biggest
yeah,
impact. And we're considering that lens of, is it more money? Does it help us get more revenue, decrease our expenses, improve the lives of our clients, improve the lives of our staff? And that's such a strategic way to decide, how am I going to improve myself as an owner next? So just like bravo to you. I
yeah,
think that gives our listeners such a beautiful model for how to think about, what do I learn next, and how do I decide what to learn next? And Simon's answer is, well, what does your business need? Which I think is
yeah,
so smart. Yeah. I'm
yeah.
going to end it there, my
Well,
friend.
I,
Oh, go
I
ahead. Last thought. Go for
okay.
it.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, I think it's really important too, Michael, understanding taking some time and being really thought out on your annual goals,
Mm,
because it's the same as in the gym. Uh, it's easy to lose your focus at a certain point. And that's the great thing about quarterly plans. You can change those things based on the annual goals at any point in the quarter, and those can change. But if you're using the annual goals to kind of guide that compass and make sure that
mm,
focus doesn't you don't lose that focus over the course of the year, and you do what you say you're going to do, that it's just really really important. So taking a little bit more time with those annual goals to make sure that's where you want to go, then you can get a little bit creative, and you can get um, a little bit more, do different things through the quarterly goals. And that's how we've used it.
yep.
But again, those annual goals provide that compass for us, and it's making sure we understand what we committed to, and that focus isn't lost over the course of 12 months per se.
Yeah. Yeah, fantastic. I love that idea that your annual goals, like in the visuals, it's a real compass pointing you and your team in the right direction. So, bravo! I think it's a
Yep.
great sentiment to leave our listeners with. Thank you for this conversation, Simon. And dear listeners, if you want to find more about Simon, where can they learn more about you or follow Bold Fitness on the internet?
Yeah, I don't really have too much social media myself, but the
Sure.
business is Bold Athlete, and yeah, we're located in Calgary. If anyone's coming through Calgary, make sure to give us a shout, and we'd happy to have you in the gym and show you what we do.
Yeah.
But yeah, really appreciate your time, Michael, and
This,
extremely grateful for you and everybody on staff, and for everything that you've given to us over the course of the last year and a half.
Yeah, well, it's been a blast working with you. I'm excited for hopefully many more years to come. And dear listeners,
Yeah,
if you found this conversation valuable, please leave us a 5-star review everywhere you listen. I think Simon and I earned it today. So give us a great review. And if you want to email me, it's michael@businessunicorns.com. Let me know who you want me to talk to next, or what topics you want me to cover. If you want to join Unicorn Society and hang out with me and Simon more, just go to businessunicorns.com, click on work with us, and you can sign up for our current wait list for Unicorn Society. But that's it. Thanks for the great conversation again, my friend. And listeners, I'll see you on the next one. Bye.
bye.